This podcast is sponsored by Velo Yellow, providing bike transport to events across Europe. Website link available in the podcast description.
You are an Ironman!
Welcome to episode 69, and today I'm joined by Gary Ray. Gary, you're very welcome onto the podcast.
Thank you very much. I feel honoured to be here.
Good man yourself, Gary. We've been chatting behind the scenes for a number of weeks, and I've been really looking forward to having this chat with you this evening. Like all the guests that have been on it, you have quite the CV, and we've got a very, very busy timeline to try and work through here this evening.
Okay.
Very keen to try and understand the guy before the man that I'm looking at here at the minute. So if we go back in time, tell me a wee bit about growing up, Gary, back in the day, where you were reared, what sort of antics and badness you might have got up to at school before you were this machine that you are today.
I think, well, first of all, to anybody who's listening, I'm 62. That's the first thing. So growing up in Belfast in the early 70s, wasn't exactly what you call a joyous occasion. However, we were pretty much sheltered from any of the badness by wonderful parents. But also, curiously, we moved down to the south of Ireland for a couple of years. My father got a job in a major factory in Dundalk, and we lived there. And that, for like an 8-year-old, was idyllic. And so I spent all my time outside, as you can imagine, in the fields. And any friends I had, I ran everywhere. I didn't want to walk because I was going to waste my time playing. So I ran everywhere. So I think that's probably the genesis of where my sort of endurance may have started, unbeknownst to me at that time.
So
and then
running about the fields like Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer and the likes, just racing about.
Yeah, with a dog and a couple of friends. And it was, bearing in mind that the dark days of which we lived in that time, I was completely blissfully unaware of it. All I wanted to do was go outside, play in the fields, play in the river, and come back into the house when I was hungry. Mickey, that's what it was then.
Brilliant.
And then when I came back to Northern Ireland, I mostly was involved in playing football. Even from the age of in P5, I played football for the school football team. And as I got older, when I went to secondary school in Belfast, I played for the school football team. And curiously, the school I went to was a very, very rough school in Belfast. And I was ostensibly brought up, with manners. And to say please and thank you, almost got you beat up for being so well-mannered. And what kind of got me out of the sights of the bullies was the fact that I played football for the school football team. So they gave me a bye ball because though I spoke quite posh from the area in which I went to school in, I played football for the school team. And that got me out of a lot of difficulties.
Brilliant stuff. There's Tara, what a good upbringing and a bit of manners can do for a man.
Yeah, shocking.
And similarly, what it is to be, one of the boys, as in representing the school on the pitch. And I would have seen that myself within my own school. The lads that were good at football would have maybe got away with a lot of things, even from the teachers. I would have got clipped around the ear if I hadn't my homework done, but certain other lads from Greencastle or wherever might have got a pardon, because they were very, very useful in midfield.
Right. And I think, even with running, I didn't particularly like running. I endured cross-country events and I ran for the school because it was another event to do. I just threw myself into every sport. And to be honest, not particularly good at any of them, but I just loved the whole idea of immersing myself in sport to the point whereby I had actually given up a couple of sports because I was doing too many. And that was kind of the rhythm of my life at that time. And of course, when you're living in Belfast and you're a young teenager, the two things you become really good at, first of all, you're very good at telling lies. Because when you're stopped in a particularly difficult area of Belfast and ask you, what religion are you? First of all, you had to gauge, right, where am I and what can I say? And if you said one thing, say I said Protestant, or if I said I'm an atheist, they'd say, well, you're a Protestant atheist or a Catholic atheist. So you're brought up a liar and also a good runner because you fled for your life on a regular basis. But at the same time, it was all part of growing up, and we had friends from both sides of the community. My mum and dad were very much, treat people as you find them, and we had a wonderful sort of childhood, playing football and just hanging out with your mates.
You certainly pick up a few survival skills, don't you? Like, I know you and I are, we were 10 years apart in age, but I suppose remember those days as well, in certain parts of the town, you have to,
Yeah.
I could be Mikey somewhere and Michael somewhere else.
Yeah.
I remember actually as a young adult, working for Securicor, delivering parcels up around Derry.
Yeah.
So whenever I was on the bog side, it was Michael Collins. When I was over on the water side, it was Mikey, So it was either that or get thrown out of the van and get the whole thing set alight.
Yeah.
But the joys of the wonderful world that we used to live in, thankfully it's a wee bit handier now, but
Let us the level-headed people we are today.
that's it. Gary, there's a very interesting story that I want to begin this whole sort of triathlon journey, and it starts on a golf course in Turkey.
So, as I said, I threw myself in most sports, and then I found myself with a cohort of friends who were all golfers, and I joined in. And I got myself down to a handicap of 17, so it wasn't rubbish, but I still was very nervous in the first tee box. And so there's about 8 of us used to go away on a holiday every year. And this particular year 6, whatever it was, one of the guys started to talk about Ironman, and I had never heard of Ironman before. I had no concept whatsoever what an Ironman was, but this guy was particularly excited about it, and he said, I said, well, what is an Ironman? He explained what it was, and he says at that stage he said there's a 15-hour cutoff in Barcelona, and he trumpeted the fact that he believed he could do it. Now, my friend Ed, you call him, I know he's a very determined character, and he was a similar vintage to me. However, he was about 3 stone overweight, and I said, Ed, you are never doing that. He says, yes, I will. I says, I'll bet you £1,000 here and now you don't and can't do an Ironman. Now, there was drink taken, Mickey. There was drink.
Yep.
So anyway,
this was the 19th hole then, I assume.
19th, 20th, and 21st. So the next day I said, listen, Ed, I know we were drinking last night. I'll let you off the hook. If you don't want to do the Ironman, the bet will fold. He says, no, I ain't going to do it. I said, well, that's okay. Here's the thing, Eddie. If you do it, you don't get the money. The money goes to charity. So you pick the charity and vice versa. If you do it, you get the money. If you don't do it, I pick the charity. So off he went to do Barcelona. And he didn't do it. Right? Now, he didn't do it because he had a malfunction with his bike.
Right.
And he couldn't complete it. So he let the bet roll over. And I said, that's okay, Ed. Do the next one. And he did it. He did it.
Right.
He lost a bit of weight, but he wasn't your classic endurance athlete shape and size. So, of course, I had to pay up then. But anyway, that was the least of the money that I spent. Bearing in mind, a year later, I decided to do one. And the same guy said to me, Gaz, to do your first full Ironman, it'll cost you about £7,000. I says, what do you mean? He says, well, the time you buy your bike, the time you pay your entry, the time you buy your 2 wetsuits, your Garmin watch, your 3 pairs of trainers, your flights, blah, 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 blah. You're talking 7,000. I went, right, okay. And I didn't do a full Ironman then until whatever it was, 2018. The first one I did was a half in Cascais in Portugal. And there's a guy I worked with, and he was itching to do an Ironman. And him and I were actually quite nervous about it. And I said, look, Michael, I'm not a great swimmer. Okay, I'm not a great swimmer. If I can master getting up and down the pool without being out of breath after one length, I'm with you. So I was at David Lloyd's in Belfast, and I was sitting outside in the outdoor pool, And I'd been swimming for 3 or 4 weeks, and I couldn't get past one length without having to stop and get my breath. And I
Mm-hmm.
spoke to this girl, I'd been watching her, and I said, how many lengths have you done? Oh, I've done 40. I said, how long did that take you? 25 minutes. So something clicked that day because I thought, I'm going to do this. By the Friday, that was the Monday, by the Friday, I was also doing 40 lengths, but it took me 25 minutes. So something clicked. So then I said to my pal, I says, Michael, let's do it. Now he picked cash. I always let other people do the research, which sometimes isn't a very clever thing to do. And I remember, Mickey, actually ringing them and saying, let's push the button now. Let's push the button now. And we both did it. And I felt so nervous just pushing the button.
Yeah.
And then it was 5 months later, we're in Portugal. We met these Irish lads. And they said, well, boys, is this your first Ironman, first half Ironman? I says, yes, it is. He says, well, you picked a really hard one. I says, what?
Don't tell me that.
He explained the elevation, and I realized we had picked a hard one. It was so difficult for me because I didn't know anything about nutrition. I had a bike, I trained, I ran, I swam, but I had no idea about nutrition. So it was really raw to it. And I remember at the very end of a 70.3, now it was quite hot, hugging my friend, arms around him, hugging him.
Mm-hmm.
Then, Michael, we will never be able to do a full one. I was so tired, I couldn't even get on to the couch where they give you a massage. I was like one of those big fat roly polies rolling the couch. It was just insane. And then next year we did the full one, but it was bonkers.
Absolutely class. So zombie scenes at the end of Cascade, and but the famous last words, "never again,"
Yeah,
didn't last too long. There was something. There was something in there, in the pain and misery and the inability to walk, that you thought, let's go back for more. So Barcelona then was 2018.
yeah.
Talk me through how that panned out.
So that was the following year. I managed to hook about 6 other guys to do it. And the guy, Ed, who did the first one, who I had a bet with, he came with us as well, hooked these other boys. And most of the boys doing it was their first, and they're better athletes than me, far better athletes. And I brought the wife, I brought my daughter, I brought my son, and he brought his partner. And it was a real family occasion.
Mm-hmm.
And the clever thing about what I've learned early doors is bring the wife. Bring the wife because she deserves a trip because of all the moaning that I do the whole year prior to an event.
Yeah.
And long hours, and I'm out on my bike. She deserves a trip. And she has become my greatest supporter to the point whereby she said to me after Barcelona, I'm just going to go ahead a bit here. After Barcelona, she says, Gary, my arms are really sore from clapping. She took one look at my face and then she realized what she'd said. But Barcelona was an interesting one because my fear is always a swim.
Mm-hmm.
Always a swim. And the swell was so bad that day they almost cancelled it. However, it went ahead and it was so ridiculous you could not see the safety boats. You're up and down, up and down, up and down. But I think what got us through it was the water was relatively warm compared to back here in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And we got through it. But apparently my daughter then, who was 24 at the time, she came down to see how I was getting on. And she took one look at the water and burst into tears because she thought her dad's going to drown.
Was that the year then where there's some videos of it from the beach and the waves are crashing and there's people getting thrown back? It kind of reminded me of scenes of Ironman Ireland in 23, but it looked quite similar, very, very rough, getting in just from the beach. I know there's a very steep kind of drop off when you get into the water, so presumably that was just firing up from the depths.
Yeah.
Big white horses coming trampling over the top of you.
That was insane, Mickey. It was absolutely insane. But what, as you know yourself, once you get through it, you feel king of the world, and that's a case of get on your bike. And my pal once said to me, he says, Gary, see when you get your spot in transition for your bike, video it so you'll know exactly, and look over the video so you'll know exactly where your bike is. Well, most of those events I go to, mine's the only bike.
Because you're getting your money's worth out of your swim, is that
Yeah, yeah,
it?
yeah. Generally speaking, the man's brushing up and turning the lights off when I climb. But Barcelona was a learning curve as well, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend Barcelona to anybody for various reasons. But I managed to get through Barcelona, and it kind of lights a fire in you, Mickey, doesn't it? Once you do one, somebody said to me once, not that I've done this, says it's like taking crack cocaine. You can't help.
Yeah, you get a wee taster. Your wee 70.3 was a wee
Yeah,
free sample, and then wallop, you're hooked. And thousands of pounds later, you're still at it.
bonkers. Um, yeah, so that was a learning curve, and then the following year I went back and did Copenhagen, and I loved Copenhagen. I really loved Copenhagen. I loved the people. I loved the setup. It was done in an estuary, and part of it was a river, and so therefore I didn't have the anxiety of the swim because I knew the estuary is quite, quite shallow. You could actually stand up at one point. So if you were getting it tight, you just stand up. Now I didn't, but I knew I had that if I needed it. And so I loved it. And my pal Ed, he got food poison that day. He couldn't do it. I have another pal, Mark. He got off the bike and couldn't do the run. He hurt his knee. Another guy called Michael Chandler, he smashed it. He did, sub 10 or something ludicrous. Really brilliant. But a really beautiful, beautiful course and event. And if I was going to do another one again, Copenhagen. And that's the very first time I actually heard the announcer saying, and we have such and such coming down from Kalmar, and they're doing their second Ironman 2 days in a row. I said, have I heard that correct? Because Kalmar's on the Saturday, Copenhagen's on the Sunday, and some people do this duo.
Mm-hmm.
They must be insane.
Yeah.
And and that was the case. It was the case. It was absolutely bonkers.
There's quite a few nutters that do back to backs.
Yeah,
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 and I have spoken to a few of them on this podcast actually.
insane.
And when I say nutters, I mean that in the nicest possible way.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But hey, big difference there between the sea swim in Barcelona
All right.
and that nice calm sheltered swim in Copenhagen. So I mean,
Yeah. It,
I've said it before, and we've talked about it with various guests. That Copenhagen swim is the one to go for a first timer, if particularly if they're a wee bit anxious about the open water and the sea and the swells and the waves and all that sort of malarkey.
absolutely, absolutely. Um, so then that sort of takes me up to I actually got a coach to get me through Nice, and I picked Nice because I'd heard all this sort of Ironman snobbery,
Mm-hmm.
whereby if you do an event, somebody will immediately say, "Yeah, but you haven't done Lanzarote, or you haven't done Nice, or whatever else." And I didn't think that existed until somebody said that to me one time, and I went, "What? I've just done an Ironman, and you're saying, but you haven't done this, you haven't done that."
Aye.
So I didn't really fancy Lanzarote because I'd heard all the horror stories about Lanzarote, although I may do that yet, but with the wind and the hills. So I picked Nice, which had 2,600 meters of elevation for the bike. And I got a coach and trained really hard for it. Kind of got my nutrition all wrong, but that's another one of my stupidity aspects. But the thing about Nice was, again, I brought the wife, and I said, "Look, Jill, there's no point you coming down to watch me get into the water because we're all walking down like zombies at 6:30 in the morning with our wetsuit half down round our waist. Just you stay and come and watch me throughout the course." But I was anxious again about the swim. So I'm walking down towards transition to check my bike, and my heart's going through my wetsuit. And I start to pray. I pray a lot in the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Listen, God, you know, please make it not too difficult to swim." And that was okay. And it was pretty choppy, right? And I went into transition to check my bike, and I said again, "Just give me a sign it's going to be all right." And these three Italians rock up beside me, and one of them takes his top off. And Mickey, I kid you not, he had a tattoo of Christ on his back.
Right.
That'll do. That'll do. That was the quickest answer to prayer I've ever had in my life. Not that I smashed the swim, but my anxiety went like that.
Brilliant stuff.
Left me, and I went to the swim. The cycle was incredible. I don't know if you've done it before. Have you done these?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
Amazing. Very hot day. Got my nutrition completely wrong. I'd never ever had cramp in the bike before. Had to get off the bike 4 times. And I passed all these people on the bike, and you know why they have the names on the back of your sort of bib, and I'm saying, go on, Sean, keep going, you're doing really well. And next thing, Sean's passing me, I'm standing on the side of the road trying to stretch my legs. I got through the cycle. I got off the bike. I could hardly walk because my nutrition, I just didn't take enough electrolytes and stuff and salt, and that's schoolboy error. Really, really ridiculous. No excuses. I got 3 miles into the marathon, and I saw the wife and her friend, and I said, Jill, I'm done. She said, what do you mean? I said, I'm done. Unless I get some sort of painkillers, I'm done. And her friend gave me these 6 tablets. They could have been HRT for all I knew. Here's Mickey, and it got me through the marathon. It got me through it, and I crossed the line. But my wife took one look at me when I got across the line. She looked like, oh my goodness, Gary, you've lost so much. Well, it looked like I'd lost so much weight. I looked terrible. But it was, again, it's all about building resilience, Mickey. See all those events that we do? It's all about resilience. And every time it's really, really hard, you're just building a wee bit more resilience for the next time.
100%. The other thing that I was looking to tap into as well, just out of personal curiosity, because it's something that's on my radar, was just before you did Nice, so in between Ironman Copenhagen and Ironman Nice, you did a couple of ocean lava events. You did 70.3s in the ocean lava. I have my eye on an ocean lava event in Lanzarote, and I really, really fancy it. Is there a big difference between your experiences and the vibe with ocean lava compared to Ironman? I know kind of Ironman's all razzmatazz and lights and rock and roll, but there's a nice sort of vibe. I don't know what it is, a beach vibe or a friendly sort of a vibe that I am getting from the ocean lava.
You're 100% right. As you know, it's all about the brand with Ironman. It's all about the brand. Even to the point whereby if you're running up the red carpet and your zip from your tri-suits down, they get you to zip it up. Heaven forbid if your child is at the side and you lift your child up in your arms and run across the line, they won't allow that. So ocean lava, complete opposite. They encourage you to take your wife, your children in your arms and run across the finish line. And obviously they're the same numbers. They're not only getting maybe 1,000 people or 800 people, certainly in Montenegro. The reason why I did ocean lava in Montenegro was I always wanted to go to Montenegro. And what better way to see it than actually do a 70.3? And the first year I went, the sun was splitting the trees. The water was in a fjord, and it was dead calm. It was beautiful. I mean, I loved it. And funny, when I got on the bike and set off the bike, I got about a mile, and I saw this pack in front of me, 4 guys and a girl. And I don't know what she had done, whether she was looking forward to lift her water bottle or not. But she then came out of the pack, and the pack went on, but she lost control. And she hit the curb with her front wheel. Now I'm far enough back to see all this. And next thing, down she goes. So I'm the first bike beside her. I'm off the bike. She's lying in a heap on the ground. Her feet are out of the cleats, thankfully. And the blood is just teeming down her face. Because, you know, if you get a cut in around your forehead or anywhere around there, the blood just pumps out. So I'm standing there with her, and I got my hand on where the cut is. And I said, look, no, just put your hand there. That'll stop the blood. You're okay. I sat her down, got her knees up, sat her against the wall, tried to encourage her and say, like, you're okay. I didn't want her to go into shock. And then one of the volunteers comes along and went, oh, flip, look at the state of you. And the poor girl went, what? But what can happen in front of you? The next thing, an ambulance arrived and it took her away and stuff. And it was, it was the right thing to do because this poor lassie, And then I got an email from the race director saying, listen, thank you so much. I'm aware that you helped this girl. She's a friend of mine. I was hoping he's going to say you've got free entry the next year. Not a bit of it. Not a bit of it. But it was a really beautiful, beautiful event. And I loved it so much that I hooked my friend Derek into it the following year. Now, Derek is from Glasgow. And the year I did it with Derek, I don't know if you remember or not, but there was a deep depression, weather depression sitting over the Adriatic. It was so bad that the Italian Grand Prix was cancelled because everything was flooded. So I hooked him and two other friends to do this event, and it didn't stop raining. And then, of course, the water's now coming down off the mountains into the fjord to make the water even colder.
Mm-hmm.
And they've a really lovely thing, a bit like Kona. The day before, they have you swimming out to a boat. They take Instagram photographs. They give you a coffee. It's a lovely experience. So I swam out to the boat. My feet were so cold when I got back to get changed. I said to the wife, had I not brought these friends here to do this event tomorrow, I wouldn't be doing it. And I only did it because I'd hooked them.
Right.
But the next day you're in the water and did the swim, that's fine. And my friends always laugh at me because my transitions are so slow. I sometimes get changed completely and then get into my sort of race gear for the bike.
Mm-hmm.
So I get into a tent to get changed, and they were playing Red Hot Chili, one of the Red Hot Chili songs, and I started to sing it, and my pal appeared. And we stood there for about 5 minutes singing this song, trying to get warmed up. The water, you had to cycle through the water, up to your ankles, trying to go through the water, and then away we went. And it dried up for the run. And that's the one where I got a podium place for age group. I came third, much to my utter amazement, complete amazement. I got third place for that. And that really was, it really lifted me. But my pal from Glasgow says, really, Gary, really? There's a heat wave in Glasgow and we're here and it's laughing out of the heavens. So that was a standing joke then.
That's right. The only weekend whenever Montenegro was colder, wetter, and more miserable than Glasgow. Like that takes some beating, to be fair, weather-wise.
Ridiculous.
Class.
So
Hey,
go ahead.
you were saying there as well, just with regards to you mentioned it earlier on, whenever you were recounting your time in Copenhagen, that there was a nut job that had done the Kalmar Ironman the previous day. There was something about that kind of caught your ear as well, because you decided that you would give that a go as well. So you tackled Kalmar then, am I right, the year after Nice?
Yeah, so in between that, we did Aberfeldy in Scotland, because my pal said, right, you've got to come to Scotland and do a 70.3 because I've come to Montenegro with you. And so we did that, and that was another one. That was another beautiful, beautiful event up to the Highlands, and I managed to get again podium for second, which again I had no consideration of it because I'm running into the finish bit, and the announcer said, "Oh, here's Gary Ray, blah blah blah." I thought there was no Gary Ray behind me, but anyway, that's but yeah. So because of Kalmar, I'd heard about Kalmar for so many people, and part of the reason we did Kalmar was my friend Derek, who I'll mention again later. He's CEO of a major charity, Catherine McEwen Foundation. They raise money for colitis and Crohn's disease in Glasgow. And he said to me, guys, will you do a full Ironman with me? I want to raise money for this charity. And I said, yeah, sure. I said, what if you don't fancy doing the Marthon Des Sables? He said, no, I want to do a full Ironman first. So I picked Kalmar because I'd heard all these wonderful stories about Kalmar. And I loved it. I really loved it. We flew into Copenhagen. We got the train to Kalmar. We had a great hotel. The swim again was one of those ones, a bit of a panic attack. I'm praying in the water. And probably about 30 seconds we're saying, that's it, I'm out. And I just went for it. And it was absolutely stunning. And I've told so many people, I think Ironman would suggest that Kalmar is the one Ironman event that gets the most athlete satisfaction.
There you are.
Incredible. So no sooner was Kalmar over, Derek says to me, so want to do the Marthon Des Sables? And I went, oh, I was kind of hoping you'd forgotten that. I said I would. I said, yeah, okay, we'll do that. So Kalmar was sort of the last full Ironman, and we did Alcudia the following May. Again, another beautiful in Mallorca. And then he says, right, let's push the button. Honestly, it's just insane, Mickey, because the nerves I felt, because I'd read everything about the Marthon Des Sables, and the nerves I had pushing the button, because also it's very expensive. I think it's over €4,000, and it gets sold out. So the pair of us, again, he's raising money for Captain McEwen, and obviously I'm doing my wee bit as well. And if you go right back to the start when I said, I'm 62, like, what idiot at 62 decides it's a great idea? A Northern European, pasty-faced Irishman going to the desert. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, time will tell. Time will definitely tell.
Yeah.
Right, but tell me this: the nerves that you experienced when you were pushing the button for the Marthon Des Sables, was it similar or worse than those nerves that you had when you initially hit the button for that first Ironman in Barcelona?
I think it's comparable because it's fear of the unknown. It's fear of the unknown. The good thing about the Marthon Des Sables, I don't believe there's any water there to swim in, so I'll not have that anxiety.
You'll not need the rosary beads with you, maybe.
No, I don't think I'll need anything. Although, the curious thing is, my wee pal, he's an atheist. He says, Gary, you're not going to try and convert me? I says, no. I says, your journey's your journey. But I said, one thing I'll guarantee, you will pray at some stage without a shadow of a doubt. See, in those dark moments when you're trying to do 100 kilometers, you'll pray. So I had a laugh about that.
There'll be all sorts of apparitions and mirages and things that'll happen in the desert that one could suggest are divine interventions.
Yes.
But I was chatting to a fella there a couple of weeks ago, actually, in the leisure centre, and we were both talking about how Ironman had changed our perceptions of ourselves as individuals. And I just wanted to tap into this bit for you because, as I understand it, when we finish an Ironman, there's a sense of belief that falls upon us, and it becomes kind of, it redefines who we are, but it certainly gives us a notion that we could do anything.
Yeah.
And I suppose what I'm trying to get at was, or is, had you not have completed Ironman, would you have been in a position to consider the Marthon Des Sables? Or because you did complete Ironman and because you've come on that journey, you're now thinking, well, if I can do that, well, I can do this.
Yeah. The way I look at it, no. The short answer is no. I would not have even contemplated the Marthon Des Sables without going through this first. And the way I look at the halves and the fulls I've done, what have you, that's almost my undergraduate degree, and then I went from there to a master's degree when I did Nice. This is my PhD.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
This
is relatable.
All that stuff, though. So Nice took me forever. It was 15 hours 40. So I know I've got 15 hours 40 in me when I go to the Marthon Des Sables.
That's a good starter, isn't it?
So I know I've got that in there. And I also know most of the Marthon Des Sables, most people walk 80% of it, right? The elite athletes are the elite athletes. But also what I think I have, like yourself, Mickey, doing all those events, you have the mental capacity to embrace the pain. And I truly believe that's the case. And that's the difference. And I don't think I could have done that. I haven't done it yet, obviously. I don't even think I would have contemplated entering the Marthon Des Sables. I know I've went through a lot of pain, as we all have when we do this journey. Whether you're a marathon runner, ultra-marathon runner, or whatever it is, you embrace the pain. And we put ourselves into situations that, most people just think you're mad. And the reaction I get from telling people about the Marthon Des Sables was exactly the same reaction I got when I explained I was going to do an Ironman. They all think you're mental. Now, people go about it, go, that's amazing. I would love to do that. And I've said, well, when you come to do it, don't buy all the kit. you can borrow mine.
That's right. 100%. Just to give them a less wriggle room to get out of it. It's all right saying, "Oh, I'd love to do that." I'm sure, I no bother. I lend you all my stuff, not a problem. Tell me this: how has the training been going? Because I suppose we're recording this podcast at the beginning of March.
Mm-hmm.
Marthon Des Sables is in April.
Yeah. So first of all, it's on the 5th of April. The first actual race starts on the 5th of April, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll say race. The event starts the 5th of April. My training started in June, and I embraced the Philip Maffetone heart rate training, which is take your age away from 180. So I was sitting there and allow yourself 3 or 4 or 5 different beats per minute because you're fit. So I was trying to train at 124, 125 beats per minute, which is really, really frustrating, difficult, and boring.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first started doing it back in June, it took me like 15 minutes to do 1 mile. And then I got that down to 10 minutes and 9 minutes. And now I've introduced hills, it's going back up again. But it does work, but it takes forever for it to work. Now, the good thing about Zone 2 training, as we all know, and also the Philip Maffetone training is the likelihood of injuries is reduced considerably.
Mm-hmm.
Huge plus. The only time I started to get injuries, Mickey, and I have had injuries, was when I introduced weight, carrying weight. So I had the obligatory, I don't know whether the IT band issue was related or not, but certainly the hip flexor was related because I was doing hills as well. And then I have like a patella problem, but they all have gone away. They've all gone away, mostly. And even when I had the hip flexor injury, it wasn't causing me a huge amount of trouble training, but you want to start any event injury-free, knowing that you've done the work. So the body's incredible the way it can adjust to the stresses of what you're putting it through. For example, as we all know, you're self-sufficient in the Marthon Des Sables. You have to carry your own kit, which is probably between 7 and 8 kilos, which doesn't sound very much until you lift it up and you go, oh my goodness, this is heavy enough. Now, once it's on your back, it isn't particularly heavy. So all my training has been Zone 2, and then after start of January, introduced weight and increased the weight and increased the weight. And who'd have thought, dried food was so heavy?
Good man. You sound like you're well on your way with regards to being prepared. What type of things have you not been able to prepare for? And you mentioned it earlier on, being a pasty-faced Irishman like the rest of us. I suppose the big one's going to be the heat. Yeah. Have you been trying to acclimatise heat? Have you been sitting in saunas and all that kind of carry on?
The sauna one's quite an easy one. They suggest you don't sit more than 20, 25 minutes in the sauna, and you don't start that until about 4 weeks out. My pal, he's lucky. He has an environmental chamber in Glasgow, and I think he's booked about 18 sessions. So he has that joy because he's a pasty-faced Scotsman. And but what I have, I'm almost embarrassed to say what I've done. I've signed up for the most middle-class thing you can do, and it's hot yoga.
Right.
So they're doing an offer in a particular hot yoga studio for £45. You get 21 sessions. So my first session, fun enough, is tomorrow. My wife did one tonight. I've done it before. It really is. It's a fantastic opportunity that I'm actually looking forward to and a wee bit excited to do because A, it's fantastic for your stretching and your muscles and stuff, but B, that will definitely get me roughly where I want to be, Mickey.
In terms of beginning the event, are you going to be going out there a wee bit earlier ahead of time to try and get acclimatized to the temperatures, or what was the sort of the logistics of taking on the marathon?
If I was a gazillionaire, I'd be in Lanzarote for 2 weeks beforehand. But I'm not even. I'll fly to Marrakesh on the 1st of April, curious enough, April Fool's Day. I meet my pal there, and then we transfer out to Zote. I can't pronounce it. Which is about 4 hours from Marrakesh, and the MDS people, they take you out there in your coach, and they then take you out further the next day. You actually arrive in the middle of the desert on the 4th. so they can go through all your kit. It's very, very precise to making sure you have enough calories per day. You probably don't know all this, plus your ECG graph and making sure you've got exactly the kit you need. And the other big thing, as you know, is your feet. So I'd bought a pair of Solomon S-Lab Dust shoes, which actually have the gaiters built into them.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're expensive, but I got them, in the sale. But they also, the MDS are pretty good. They give you briefings, about 5 different briefings online. This is what you should look at, from kit to logistics to your feet. And so they recommended, believe it or not, tonight I'm going to start, because I say 4 weeks beforehand. It's like false tan.
Mm-hmm.
Rub onto your feet, the soles of your feet, and around your toes. They suggest make sure your feet don't get too hard, but also then there's a moisturizer which goes on top of the false tan, and that's to help prepare your feet against blisters. Between it and the shoes, I'm giving myself the best possible chance, because we've all seen those photographs of poor souls with their feet in absolute tatters, and I would like to avoid that as best I could.
Your missus is going to have some crack chuckling at you this evening, and maybe the next few nights putting the fake tan on and your moisturising routine and the whole bit, and doing the yoga and all the rest. And it's all because you're going to be doing one of the most challenging bloody things. It's ridiculous though, isn't it? It sounds like you're pampering yourself and looking after yourself and being all sort of sweetness and all. But it's actually in preparation for one of the most bloody gruelingest things on the planet.
That's right.
Nuts.
You'd curse yourself if you didn't give yourself the best possible chance. You would.
Oh, totally.
Because I'm not going to spend €4,000 next year and the next year and the next year. And the other reason I like doing this, and I'm not really big into social media, but people who know me, and it's, just because you're 60 doesn't mean to say you're done, okay? And I know people have their different hobbies, and they, all sorts of things, maybe the academics, or maybe into the arts and culture and stuff, and that's fine. That's really brilliant, because that keeps their mind active and it keeps them active. But for me, I always say this, and when we do big long runs on a Sunday, I always say, when you get up early out of bed, and you can easily stay in bed, what's the alternative? Do you want to lie in bed an extra 45 minutes? Or do you want to go out with your mates and run these trails, and you get a real buzz afterwards, and then you get your coffee and your buns, and you talk absolute rubbish for an hour, but you on top of the world. And that's what keeps me motivated, Mickey. And I want to motivate people also who maybe are not in the same journey as me. It could be the very first park run, because the very first park run is every bit as important to them as this is to me. Mine is no different. It's just a different journey, but their journey is every bit as difficult. So I'm part of a coaching team, and we coach people, from Couch to 5K in Victoria Park. And this is what I tell people. And I said, look, listen, this is the start of your journey. And this is a really beautiful journey. And when you graduate in 10 weeks at the park run, make sure your family are there to photograph you, and we'll be there to support you and cheer you on. Because I want to motivate people. And if it motivates one person to say, I'm not done yet, I can still go, well, that's an absolute joy.
That's absolutely amazing, Gary. Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that. That's class. I couldn't have put that any better myself. You mentioned there about your nutrition. Where are you getting their sourcing the dried food, and how does that work? You just add water, presumably, and I assume you have been testing that on the roads. And the other thing that I was curious about was sweating and salt and electrolytes and bits and bobs. Do you have to take extra stuff like that?
Yeah, curiously, this last year was the first time they introduced like OXO cube type things. And they have you taking OXO cubes, because there's so much salt and so much electrolyte stuff in OXO cubes. So
Right.
encourage you to bring that, but obviously salt tablets as well, and they supply a lot of salt, because it's very easy when you're on your own out there to forget to take enough salt. And if you don't take enough salt, you can't keep the water down anyway, because the water will come straight back up again. So you have to be disciplined. And I'm lucky to run with a pal, because we've already said, all right, every half hour we have to take a salt tablet or an OXO cube or beef cube, whatever it is, because otherwise you go downhill very, very, very quickly. And so there is that discipline as well. It's all part of that discipline. And I think, obviously I haven't done this before, but it's something that your race is over if you don't have that discipline. You can be as fit as you like, but your race will be over. So we have to be so disciplined about it.
There's another one thing that we haven't done, and it's because we've been too excited. The two of us have been excited about chatting about all this. We've actually forgot to explain what the Marthon Des Sables is for anybody that hasn't heard about it, because let's give them the stats there, Gary. What are you going to be facing next month?
Normally it's meant to be 250 kilometres over 6 days. Because it's the 40th edition, they decided we'll make it 268 kilometres. So the long day is meant to be a double marathon, and they've decided in their wisdom, you know what, we'll make it 100 kilometres. What a joy that is. What a joy. So extend the time. Your cut-offs are pretty generous anyway. As long as you don't feel the hot breath of a camel behind you on your neck, you're ahead of the game. So I can never get it right, Mick. It sounds ludicrous. I think it's 6 marathons in 5 days or something like that, but it's 268 kilometres and self-sufficient. Bring all your own stuff in a rucksack, but you do go to a bivouac, and they give you 4.5 litres of water when you arrive there. And you go through different aid stations, and they're very, very strict, and they will check you. And if they think for 1 minute you're going downhill, they'll pull you out of the race. They're really, really good, from what I can see.
So you will be well looked after. And how many's going out with you then? You've said it's just the two of you that are participating in it then, as a duo. He's going to stick together. What's the plan?
Yeah. And my darling wife and two of my friends are going to fly to Marrakesh on the 8th, and they're going to live it up in a 5-star hotel, having cocktails while I'm sucking sand. And then I join them on the 13th for 2 days, all being well. And
I remember watching an episode of Bear Grylls,
mm-hmm.
and he was doing one of those survival scenes, and I'm pretty sure that he lifted camel dung, and when he squeezed it, he got enough water out of it to be able to survive in the heat. Yeah. I don't know whether that's allowed in the Marthon Des Sables, but I think it probably tastes better than the Oxo Cube.
Yeah. If I'm squeezing camel dung, something has gone spectacularly wrong in my preparation, Mickey.
Yeah. Meanwhile, your mate's saying the Hail Mary behind you.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant, Gary! It's been wild crack chatting to you. Will you do me a favour and come back on just for a wee brief 10-minute? Sometimes I do an episode called Back to the Future, and we invite some of our guests back on who have talked about events that they have coming up. So it's nice just to link in. So I would love you to come back on and give us a wee recap of how you get on.
Yep, I'll be completely insufferable, and opposed to just insufferable if I manage to get through this.
Oh, it'll be unreal. Anything else in the pipeline for the rest of the year? Are you going to hang up the Solomons after the MDS, or have you got any other plans?
Just a couple of quick ones. I actually looked at Ironman, which is in Israel. It's probably not a good place to go right now. You've had for a couple of years. The one I'm really, really keen to do is the Medoc Wine Marathon in Bordeaux. So if you haven't heard of that, it is what it says, but every aid station is 1 mile apart, and it's wine. And so they break it down into breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast, light wines, yogurt maybe. Lunch, heavier wines with cheese, and then heavy wines for the end with maybe duck and stuff. And also, it's fancy dress. So, Again, what could possibly go wrong?
Is this over 26 miles with 26 courses of wine in fancy dress?
Yeah. And
I can imagine that ending absolutely spectacularly. And I might even suggest that you would have bothered getting onto the massage table at the end of it as well, as you did back at was it Barcelona?
and that's in Bordeaux. I think it's either September, October. And they're very clever the way they release the places. They don't say on this date we'll release it. During the month of March, you have to go on every day to see if there's availability, and then you hit the button. So I'm toying the idea whether to do it this October or the next October, but I'm definitely, God spares me, I'll do some more stuff.
I know a few lads who maybe wouldn't be well interested in doing endurance sports, but they would be up for the training. They would definitely be up for training for that. Oh, matey. Great stuff. All right, Gary, I think I'll put some links in the description just for your charities that you had named there. And just want to wish you all the very best. Thank you so much for coming on. You've been a great sport, wild crack, an absolute gentleman, a gem of a guest. And just take care of yourself. Look out for yourself, and you and Derek get through that marathon in the desert.
Listen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and we'll have to hook up some stage and have a beer.
100%. Sounds like a plan.
All the best.